Hello, my name is Nur Rafinafi bin Norazaha. I'm gonna explain about the process of goods and service tax, which is GST, and then I'm gonna explain also about process of SST, sales and service tax. Now we go to our first point about process of GST. The first one is the goods and service tax. GST in Malaysia function as a value added tax, which is VAT, applied at each stage of the supply chain from manufacturing to wholesaling and retailing. Number 2, business can claim input tax credit for the tax they paid on purchase, such as raw material, intermediate goods. This will help to ensuring tax is only levied on the value added to prevent double taxation. Then, GST covers most goods and service, limiting exemption and reducing classification dispute. This broadens revenue source and provides a more stable tax system. The invoicing system ensures clear documentation of transaction, enhancing tax transparency and payment accuracy. The last one, the credit claim mechanism and digital recording keeping compel businesses to comply to a greater extent than before. That's for GST. Now we go to the process of sales and service tax, or we call it as SST. The first one is said that the sale and service tax, SST in Malaysia function as it levied on taxable goods and certain prescribed service. Is only apply at single stage tax of the supply chain from manufacture or import. Second one, business cannot claim back the SST paid for the tax they paid on purchases, such as raw material or intermediate goods. That means it pay on input because become a cost to the business and lead to be factored in selling price. SST applied to a more targeted goods and service with more exemption. This will lower the cost of living because of more exemption. SST registered business required to issue proper invoice, also detail of SST charge to ensure transparency and for recording keeping purpose. The last one, the lower compliance burden for small business because of the SST exempt more to small business from tax obligation. This is for the implementation of SST and GST.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Mama Ifran, and you guys ever wonder about the big difference between GST and SST? In Malaysia, we had both of them, and I understand it can be a bit tricky, but no worries, I got you. First up, let's talk about tax structure. Imagine yourself making a delicious nasi lemak. With GST, it's like every ingredient like rice, sambal, and the eggs get a little bit of tax added to each step, from the farmer to get the banana leaf and the person who cooks it. It's like multi-stage tax. But with SST, it's more like the tax is only added once, right at the beginning. While when the rice is small or the chicken is imported, it's like a single stage, usually manufacturing or imports level. Now, why did even we have GST? The purpose of GST was to make tax simpler and fairer by combining different tax into one big broad base. And the cool part, business could claim tax they paid on their purchases, which we call that input tax. This helps avoid tax on tax. For SST, it's a narrow base tax, meaning it's applied only to certain goods and services. And here's the things with SST. Business generally cannot claim back their input tax. Let's talk about transparency and pricing. The GST officially show on the receipt when you pay, while the SST almost transparent, cannot even see. What about compliance? GST had digital reporting and a credit system, which made it easier to track and help prevent tax evasions. On the other hand, SST simpler structures sometimes meant it was easier for business to avoid paying taxes or underdeclare. Finally, classification issue and economic efficiency. With GST, there were fewer arguments about which product or service fell into which tax category makes it more efficient and globally aligned. But for SST, there are often more debates about how to classify goods and services, which can make it less efficient and sometimes not as fair across the economy. So there you have it. Thank you.
Let's see comparison revenue between GST and SST. Firstly, GST give higher revenue compared SST. SST give a lower revenue for government. Secondly, in border tax base, GST applies too much wider array of goods and services are less specifically exempt, and SST limited only to select items and service. Thirdly, mechanism in GST greater formalization of business and compliance across supply chain. However, in SST, informality in business operation and tax compliance across the supply chain. After the rest of GST, particularly in reliance on digital infrastructure and inherent transparent. SST more susceptible underreporting and non-compliant. And lastly, comparison revenue between GST and SST is GST more consistent than SST. That's it.
So we move on to the effects on consumer prices, which is the retail sector. So GST is clearly itemized on receipts, allowing consumers to see exactly how much tax they are paying. This creates transparency and accountability at the point of sale. Businesses can claim it with tax credits. GST prevents taxes from being embedded in the cost of goods multiple times. This means the final retail price reflects only the actual value-added tax, not a compounded effect from earlier stages in the supply chains. As a result, consumers are protected from hidden or cumulative tax charges, and prices are generally more reflective of actual costs. Under SST, it's different. The tax is not always shown separately on receipts in the retail sector, meaning that consumers may not be aware of how much tax they are paying. Since SST is applied only at the manufacturing or import level, and separately on selected services, no input tax credit system exists. This can lead to taxes being built into the cost of goods at multiple stages in the supply chain. Dr. Wee pointed out that this structure creates a risk of double taxation, especially when both the sales and services components apply, and makes the final price less transparent and potentially higher for the consumer.
Hi, so my name is Shashiazi bin Abdullah Sukurni. So today I will talk about rationale behind SST continuation. So why the government prefer SST over GST? So first of all, political sensitivity and public perception. GST was previously associated with rising living costs and faced strong public opposition, especially from low and middle income groups. Due to concerns over its political impact and negative public perception, the government is cautious about reintroducing it. So we move to the second point, that is administrative ease for small business. SST is seen as easier to manage for small business because it does not involve complex process like input tax credit claims, which are required under GST. This reduces the compliance burden and administrative costs for micro and small enterprise. So for the last point is operational and transition challenge. Introducing GST would require major change to the tax system, including the training, software upgrade, and public education campaign. The government views this as a potentially risk and disruptive move in the short term, especially in the current sensitive economic environment. So that's all from me. Thank you.